we all know that the league, especially, in the AFC with all these crazy young quarterbacks, right, is offensively driven. And I don't want to sit here and like call for Mike Tomlin's job or anything like that because I think he's a great coach. No, I don't think. At the end of the day, I think he's a coach. He's a top 32 coach in the world. That means he should have a job. I couldn't agree more, right? I'm not sure what power he has over offensive personnel and play calling, but what I can look at, right, what I can do is look at the trends. Let's look at just the defensive coach just this past weekend. Just this weekend, let's see. So we have Tomlin, Belichick, Allen, Vrabel, Rivera, Campbell, Bowles, Carroll, Sala, McDermott, Smith, Staley, Eberflus, right? So 13 coaches, and 2 of them actually played each other. They went 2-11. 2-11. And 2 of them played each other, so they were bound to get a win there. And one of the games that they played each other was the Texans and the Bears, right? So, I mean, if they play anybody else, that's a loss, right? Yeah. So it's almost like 1-12. But we'll go with 2-11, right? And they all, with that one exception of a defensive coach beating a fellow defensive coach, lost to an offensive coach in every other instance. In the 11 losses, the teams averaged just under 17 points. And then combined in those losses, not average, obviously that'd be nuts average, combined in those 11 losses, the QBs threw for 9 touchdowns in 11 NFL football games. 9 touchdowns. Over a 17-game season, right? That's a pace of just under 14 touchdowns a year. 14 touchdowns a year. You tell me if that's what you wanted from your quarterback, right? Even the first-year head coaches, right? Either first year or maybe with our first year with a team. Even if they're, offensive coaches. First year, but they're offensive, so they're more progressive, right? You got Doug Peterson, Mike McDaniel, Nathaniel Hackett, Kevin O'Connell, Nick Sirianni, Arthur Smith, Zach Taylor. They all won. They all won this weekend. And we don't think, we don't sit here and say, oh, Mike McDaniel's a genius. We don't even know if Zach Taylor's that guy yet. Nathaniel Hackett looks lost, and he still is able to find a couple wins. Kevin O'Connell's 32, and he found a win. He figured out a way to do it. Nick Sirianni had googly eyes at his first press conference. He's 3-0 today. looks really good. Right? I mean, look, the defensive coaches, I think they can still win. Right? I'd argue the combo of, great defensive coach, star quarterback, I can win some games. Brady and Bill, Tony Dungy and Peyton Manning, right? Tomlin, Cowher, and then Big Ben. Right? Russ and Pete, Jimmy Johnson, Troy Aikman, right? Here's the problem. That combo is the definition of hitting the lottery. That is a very slim percentage of the defensive coaches that we see come through. Right, so let's look at all the defensive coaches in roughly the last decade. All right, there's I didn't even count. Let's go with 30 as a rough estimate. I'm not even going to read them all off, right? You can see them here, right? For those watching, you can see it. For those listening, just watch.
Yeah, listen up. Here it is.
Even if you're on somewhere that you're just listening, this will be posted on YouTube, so you can go watch it on there, right? But there's a lot of tough coaches here, right? Well, I'll glaze over a couple. We got like Marvin Lewis, who's been pretty good, right? Chuck Pagano, who's been pretty good. Romeo Crennel has been okay, right? Obviously, these guys that have been in and out, right? Gus Bradley, Marone. Those are the guys that you see there in the black text. Look at the guys in red. Those are the ones that have been absolute failures. That's like 60% of the list. 60 to 70% of that list have been absolute failures. And even the ones that have quote-unquote worked, Rex Ryan won 3 playoff games. I mean, if that's working. I just can't put him in the category with Mike Munchak and Dan Campbell's first go-around, right? He's in the next class. He wasn't a complete disaster, right? Chuck Pagano wasn't a disaster. Doug Marone got to an AFC championship game. Mike Zimmer was a great coach. Dan Quinn went to a Super Bowl. But you look at Joe Judge, Jeff Fisher, and Steve Wilkes, and Jim Tom Sula, Mike Pettin, Brian Flores, right? People, what did Brian Flores do wrong? He was trending in the right direction. Well, I mean, I don't know. He couldn't hold down an offensive coordinator. They went through 3 of them. I mean, in 2.5 years? He's suing the organization now. No, it went great. Yeah, no, when I hire a head coach 3 years later, I want him to come sue me. That's how I know it was a great hire. Right? For whatever reason or not, it's disastrous. Todd Bowles the first time in New York, that was rough. Right? So, just in the last decade, I'm not saying that there aren't bad offensive coaches either, but I mean, look around. Let's look at all the division-leading head coaches. Harbaugh, Peterson, Mike McDaniel, Andy Reid, Matt LaFleur / Kevin O'Connell, right, tied. Todd Bowles, so I guess that's a defensive coach, but that's a tire fire of a division, and his team has yet to score over 20 points. Nick Sirianni, Sean McVay. One defensive coach. 7 of the 8 divisions offensive coach. Let's look at the last place team. That's interesting. Well, 5 out of 8 of them have a defensive head coach. Hey, this is the pivot of the league. Right? This is what happens. All the rules are offensive. This is how it goes, right? And the ones that succeed, the defensive coaches that succeed, have had excellent offensive staffs. Such as Sean McDermott, who had Brian Dable, or Bill Belichick, who had Josh McDaniels. Thank you. Completely blanked. Almost making up Mike McDaniel. But you get my point, right? So you either got to find a genius offensive coordinator, which is clearly not Matt Canada. I think we can kind of rule that option out. Or start thinking about making a switch. Now, it's not crazy. Right? It's not crazy. Not every changing of the guard has to be, you're a terrible team, you went 2-15, let's switch it, get a new coach. I mean, Bruce Arians, they just won a Super Bowl, what, a year ago, right? 1 year removed from a Super Bowl. He just moves upstairs. An administrative role. Still around the organization. You don't think he's still advising? I guarantee he is. He's on the sidelines. He's part of the reason that Marshawn Lattimore got in a fight with Mike Evans. You think he's still there? The Chiefs were making playoffs with Alex Smith. Insert Patrick Mahomes, Super Bowls. Right? There can be a smooth switch without falling into the absolute basement, into the depths. And I'm not calling for his job just yet, but I'm just saying. Look at the trend. It's right there in front of you. I mean, it's right there. I mean, you tell me. You tell me.